Good morning. Good morning. This is Doing Relationships Right. I'm Jennifer Hurvitz. I'm your host, per usual. And per usual, I bring you a fabulous guest. I mean, I don't know. I find them and I bring them and they're fabulous and I love them and that's it. So I'm going to start by introducing to you. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see Dr. Beautiful Kimberly Harms. Did I say it right? Kimberly or Kim?
Yes, yeah. Kim is easier.
Dr. Kim. Can I call you Dr. Kim?
Absolutely one.
Okay.
You just call me Kim.
All right. She's been around the block in life.
I have.
Okay. She has served as a commissioned officer in the United States Public Health Service, a dental school professor, a grief counselor, a death doula, which I think is amazing. I want to hear, a civil mediator, a clinical dentist with her late husband, Jim, in Farmington, Minnesota. Am I right? Minnesota, right?
Yes.
Okay. And a school board chair, award-winning, best-selling author and international speaker on grief, conflict, and legacy planning. She has also suffered many personal losses. Makes me sad. Including deaths by suicide of her mother and her son, and the death of her broken heart. Oh, I don't want to get all. Hi, Dr. Kim. How are you?
I'm doing really well, which is what we're talking about a little bit today.
Yes. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about everything. First of all, tell me how you started. I know you're a dentist.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you go from dentist to grief counselor to everything? Start at the beginning.
Well, I became a dentist in the first place back in the 1970s because there was this really cute guy at the University of Maryland, and his name was Jim Harms, and he was really cute. He was really cute. Yes. And he was really cute. And he wanted to be a dentist. And so I was a zoology major. And I thought maybe if I had a good job, like being a dentist, even though I'd never known there were any women dentists, I knew they were around somewhere. I'd never met one. Maybe he'd marry me because, this is the 70s. And I went to my advisor to ask about that. But there's one other problem I wasn't really thinking of because he was so cute, is that I only have 7 fingers. My mother took thalidomide before I was born, and just in Cincinnati, Ohio, there aren't many of us here in the U.S. And so I only have 7 fingers. And so I went to my advisor and I said, I'd like to go to dental school, my mind, because I want Jim to marry me. Didn't tell him that. But I only have 7 fingers. What do you think? Right. And he said, oh my gosh, are you crazy? They're not going to take you for 7 fingers.
Really?
Yes, you have to have all your fingers to be a dentist. And, what are you thinking about? And so I thought in my mind, that makes kind of sense. And I'll have to find another way to get Jim to marry me. So I got up and I was walking out the door. And then he said something that changed my life. He said, maybe if you were a man, they'd let you into dental school. They said that. This was 74. Yes, he had a big cigar. This is the 70s. This is a whole different. The big cigar, feet up on the desk. And so I realized I was 18, and I realized this guy doesn't give a darn about me. He doesn't know this. And by golly, whether Jim marries me or not, I'm going to go to dental school and I'm changing advisors because, I was 18. You tell us not to do something, we're going to do it, right? So I did. I changed advisors. I found this wonderful advisor who absolutely was terrifying in the classroom. I was terrified of her. Her name was Dr. Potter. She had little low glowing glasses. She had scraggly hair. She would lecture with a cigarette dangling out of her mouth and it wouldn't fall. I mean, she was terrifying, but she was the best advisor ever. And I came to her office and I said, Dr. Potter, and I was scared.
Yeah, of course.
I only have 7 fingers. Do you think I can go to dental school? And she said something that changed my life in a very positive way. She sat back and she looked at me and she goes, wow, no one's ever asked me that before. I don't know. Let's find out.
I love it.
And she sent me to the University of Maryland Dental School, where the advisors said, well, can you hold a mirror in your right hand? I said, sure, I can hold a mirror. And he goes, oh, then you go to dental school. One hand holds a mirror. The other hand goes to dental school. Right. So there you go. And it turned out to be a fabulous profession. Not many women were there at the time, but it was a fabulous profession. And I got the guy. The plan worked. So that's how I got to dental school. And we practiced for many, many years, and it was in a lot of different organizations. And after my son died, I lost my beautiful, beautiful son to suicide. He was an amazing kid. He was on top of the world. He was at Columbia University. He'd been recruited to Columbia. I mean, believe it or not, they're Columbia University, studying engineering. He's a National Merit Scholar. He was elected to student government at Columbia. He was in the plays at Columbia, and he loved jazz piano, and he was playing with the jazz program there. So he was living his full life. He was so happy, came home from his first semester on top of the world. And 2 weeks later, his girlfriend broke up with him, which is a normal thing in life. That's what happens, right?
Yeah.
45 minutes after the final breakup, he was gone. He just had impulsive brain, not ready, not fully developed. And he
was
he
just a young guy.
my gosh, it was the most, you can't even describe it. Your whole life explodes. You don't even
You're breaking my
describe it.
I
You
have
can't
2
describe
boys.
it.
I can't
You
even
can't describe it.
no.
Your life feels like it's over. And then a year later, and my husband had just had a liver transplant. And so he was surviving, but working 2 days a week. And I was a breadwinner. And then a year later, I went to the Mayo Clinic. I was having a lot of problems with my neck, which we dentists do. We have arthritis, everything, we start getting older. But I had nerve damage, as it turned out, to, of all places, my drilling fingers on my only good hand, right? So I only had one good hand. So of all places, could have been my toes. No, it was my good hand.
Had to be your hands. Well,
had to be
someone
hands.
was challenging you.
Someone was challenging. Yes. It's like, here we go. And I remember talking to my pastor on the way home, and I was like, right, I'm the breadwinner. What am I going to do? And he goes, well, Kim, it's not the worst thing that's ever happened to you. And it was like, whoa, okay, let's get into perspective. So I learned a lot, and I learned about managing grief. I learned that my grief affects everyone else. I learned that I had to fight my way out of the grief pit. It doesn't happen by itself. I was challenged by a nephew who's lost his brother and felt that he lost his parents at the same time, who waved his finger at me and said, don't you dare let your children feel they are not enough, your remaining children. And it just hit me like a lightning bolt.
Sure.
So I became committed to fight. And it took years. I mean, I wish I could say like, okay, then I was better. And
No.
It took years. You have to process that grief. The process takes a long time. But I just have to say to everyone out there that if you find yourself in that grief pit, know that there's a better place to live. It's a horrible place to live. I was like buying curtains because I'm going to be here forever. I'm never going to be happy. This is where I'm going to be, Well, I give up. Enough. I can't, take me now.
Right.
But I learned to fight your way out. And life, I'm a fighter. Yes, I'm a fighter. And life is so much better outside of that pit, not only for me, but for my children and for my husband. And now I have 6 grandchildren, and they get all of me. They get me fully. They don't have me with a shroud, because that's what, you can fall into that pit and stay there and look at the world through a shroud of grief. And I learned how to fight. And I'm treated for depression. Well, I became a grief counselor.
Okay.
That was part of it, because I had time on my hands, right? I had no job for me, I got time on my hands. And I learned something which I thought was fabulous. It was called, remember Kubler-Ross's stages of grief, right? But a lot of people aren't aware of Worden's tasks. Okay, I like tasks. I'm a dentist, right? We like tasks. Sure. Tasks of mourning. And the tasks of mourning are accepting the loss, which takes some time, then processing the grief, which is painful, but it has to happen. Then adjusting to your new reality. Okay, I don't have a son. I used to have a family of 5. I only have a family of 4 now. The numbers are really interesting when you go through this. Numbers mean so much. I have to adjust. So let's do the best I can for the people that I have that are living. And then put that have the love for that one that you're missing in your heart somewhere, so that you can now draw on it and think, I was so fortunate that I had those 19 years. My life is so enriched because I had those 19 years. And for Eric, God just drew me to Rwanda. We have 65 Eric Harms libraries in Rwanda now, because he loved books. He was a lover of books. Yes.
Okay. That is phenomenal. So I'm just in shock, because I didn't expect, I knew I read your bio that you were in, the whole Rwanda thing, but oh my God, what a legacy.
Yeah.
What a legacy.
Yeah. And not just it's a legacy for my son and now my husband as well. But the Rwandans, when I went to visit them shortly after, a couple of years after Eric died, they were the best grief counselors I could ever ask for, because I went there losing one child. And the people that I was with, this is, I think, 16 years after the genocide, right? These were people that I was dealing with that had lost their entire families because their neighbors killed them. I mean, it is not an invading army. It was a horrible situation. But what they learned to do is, first of all, they decided they had to forgive. How do you forgive that, right?
How do you forgive that?
There's justice, though. They had to go to jail. So it wasn't like, okay, you're free. You killed somebody. You killed a number of people, off to jail. You go for 20 years. They had to go to jail, but they forgave them, and they reconciled with them when they came out of jail, because they knew that if they didn't do that, their children would suffer the same the same divisions that they did. So they made that sacrifice for their children. And that's kind of the impetus for my book, which is let's prepare our children for a time when we're gone. And that's what they did. And so the Rwandans are the most amazing people you could ever meet. It's a safe country. It's as safe as going to Canada. It's a State Department level 1 safety level. Going to Europe, there are places that are level 2, but going to Rwanda is level 1. It's a beautiful country there. You can go on safari on the east, or you can see the gorillas to the north. It's a very small country. You can get around it. Of course, I'm a little spoiled. I'm able to get around the last couple of times without using non-flush toilets. So it's very developed. There's Marriott there.
That might be it for me.
There's a Marriott. It's a fabulous place. They we have libraries there. We have 65, but they gave so much to me. They gave me my life back, and they gave me the ability to see that human beings can survive anything, and that joy is possible no matter what. Because if they can be joyful, then I can learn to be joyful.
I have to tell you that this is so good for me, because I am like horrified of death in general. Like, I just have never lost anyone, knock on wood, that close to me. And I know that I can't go my whole life without that, right? So I'm fearing it. But listening to you talk about it, I think that you're probably so helpful to so many people, because I don't know what I would do. I just don't know. Yeah. I mean, okay, so tell me, wait, the conflict, okay, it says that I have a stat that you gave me. 57% of families after the death of a loved one, that conflict occurs. The divorce rate is higher, right?
Yes. Well, what happens is, when so many of my generation, because we are death averse, as you've just demonstrated, we are. That's just, we don't want to admit death. We don't want to admit it's going to happen. And I was like that too until my son died. And then all of a sudden everything kind of changed. But we don't like to talk about death. And in our society, we talk about everything we can do to avoid death, which is good, because the longer you live, the more legacy you can give. So that's good. But no one has gotten past that, a deadline. We have all passed away. So why don't we just admit it and face it? And in facing it, realize that there are things that we can do. When my husband died, I realized that, how, again, I had to face death, but also my little grandchildren lost their pop-pop and my daughters lost their dad. And I saw the suffering around me with that. And part of it is that we just didn't want to admit. And he was sick for a long, he had a broken heart. Actually, after my son died, his heart was just not the same. And he'd been sick for a long time, but we just didn't want to go there. We just didn't want to admit that it was going to happen. And I think by not, that's most of us. It's like most of us, right? Because it's our society. Yeah. So I just thought, why aren't we educating ourselves for this period of time? Because I'm between menopause and death. I mean, that's where I am. I mean, really, this is not physically a good time for me, but it can be a very joyful time, because I'm trying to live my life to give legacy to my children and my grandchildren, to tell them how much I love them. And when you live with that in mind, knowing you're going to have a time limit and you got to give them all the love you can right now, it's very, very helpful. And so I wrote the book to try to help people realize that, okay, live for your legacy, right? Mm-hmm. Understand death and dying. And I have a part of my book that describes how different cultures feel about death and dying. I mean, I'm a Christian. I'll send you a copy. I'm a Christian. But there are other cultures too. This is for everybody. You can't talk about death and dying without talking about your beliefs, because that's part of it. But you can interpret God or the universe or whatever any way you want, right? And I have percentages of what people believe, that we're going to a good place, we're not going to go to a good place, we're just going to be dead. And so I have that. Okay. But then the very last part is, okay, so let's prepare all the stuff we need so that our kids aren't going to fight with each other when they go, because I know of so many families. So many families where these things are done, and then they just kind of feel, and I understand, because it's like, well, I don't want to admit that I'm dying, and this is a lot of work. So, I'm going to leave some money. They can take care of it. But you're setting them up for failure. You're setting them up for bad relationships. You need to get this stuff done now. And so I have a workbook that has everything you need to get in I have mine in a little 3-ring binder. You can also put it in a secure folder online. I would have a hard copy as well. And you have every single thing you need, your passwords, all of your numbers for your accounts and your life insurance, everything in one little spot. And then things like the titles to your car, your birth certificate, all the things you're going to need to dispose of your stuff after you go, right? But then also, so my dream is that after I die, they'll be sad because I'm gone. That's a good thing. But then they'll be sad. Thank you. But then they'll realize with this book, oh, my mom loved me so much. She put all this together for me. And then when they go through the book, there's a surprise in there because I have Valentines for every single one of them, telling them how much I love them, how much they mean to me. And the first Valentine was a post, was given. St. Valentine apparently wrote a letter to the person that he loved to be delivered after he died. So really, this is a real Valentine that you can give to your family. When they're holding this precious gift, you're reminding them how much you love them. And that is the best gift you can ever give anybody. The greatest legacy is love, that you love and you care for them and you're proud of them and you're glad they were in your lives. And that's what I hope. I want to encourage everyone to have this gift of getting ready, the little work, but it's so worth it to your children. If you can have a family that is not going to fight with each other over who gets grandma's china, or be mad that, okay, you put her in a hospice, you killed her. I mean, even that stuff, you need to have your healthcare directive in there so they know this is what I want. Put me in hospice or put me in a hospital, but this is what I want. So you're not going to fight with people after death, because that is a terrible tragedy, to go through the grief of a death and then losing your family because you're fighting over issues.
Yeah, I'm really worried about that too. I have 4 kids in my family, and I know that we have to do this. I know that my mom and dad, we have to sit down, and my mom is a little bit better than my dad, but I'm going to get your book, and I'm going to get the workbook, and I'm going to send it to them in Detroit. I'm in Charlotte, but do you think that you should help them do that, or this is something they do on their own?
Well, the book is set up so that they can do it on their own, but I realize that we're all procrastinators. So I am developing a course that should be coming out. I have all the lessons down there. It'll be coming out within a month. Okay. And an online course, a very, reasonably priced online course, so that it could go step by step by step by step. So if they go, and I would recommend you go through it with some accountability partners, like maybe a book club or a Bible study or a group that meets together. Okay. You don't have to. You can do it on your own. Maybe just as a couple, work with each other.
As a couple, they can do it together.
Yes, they can do it together, but have some sort of accountability partners. I hope that that's how it's used, because I think that when you have accountability partners and you do week by week by week by week, you can get the whole thing done. You can have your little binder all put together in 6 weeks. Now, that does not include the will, which is a legal document you must do within your own state, right? So you got to get your will, done. You have to do that. And hopefully, maybe in many cases, trusts are important, but you have to get that part done. But all the rest of it, you can get done within 6 weeks. And at the end of 6 weeks, you have a legacy binder with letters to your family. I recommend they reconcile with people, right? Reconcile with the people that when my husband passed away, he actually died twice, which is actually, he died twice.
Kim.
I know, this is real. It's really happened. I have pictures. So he died he was in hospice. And the first day he died, we was in the bathtub. I took off his oxygen to put his shirt on, and he just slumped over and was gone. Oh my God, and wasn't breathing. And so I kind of snuck in and gave him a little rescue breathing, even though I wasn't supposed to. I didn't do any compressions because that could cause damage. But And nothing happened. 5 minutes, he was gone. No breathing, no pulse. Called the hospice nurse, called my daughter. I was on the phone with my daughter, and we were crying on the phone that he was gone. And the hospice nurse was banging on the door, and all of a sudden, he was in the bathtub and he was sitting up like this. We have a walk-in tub because he was falling. He was kind of sitting up like this, and all of a sudden he went, and he took a big, like in the movies, just like in the movies. Unbelievable. And so I said, he's alive. And I dropped the phone. And then the nurse was pounding on. So it had to be at least 20 minutes because I was doing rescue breathing. And then I called the nurse, and it took her probably 15 minutes to get over to so there he was, but he wasn't conscious. And then I thought, now I really screwed it up, because maybe I should have done that rescue breathing, because now he's unconscious, and he definitely didn't want to be a vegetable, and he had such a, but so then I had all that guilt. It's crazy, all the guilt you have when you go through this. It's crazy. But anyway, he ended up, nurse got him, got rescuers, got him into bed, got him all settled, and then he woke up. And he was like, well, what happened? I was just in the tub. How did I get in the bed? And it was just like, what? I was hoping he would say, I went to heaven, and there was Eric. And this, I was hoping for that. But if he had seen my son, he'd never come back. So I realized, he'd never come back. And so it was during kind of the COVID, but we had a reunion. I called all of his family, because we were not expecting him to be this close to death. We thought we'd have months and months and months. Sure. Called his family, said, you know what, if you want to talk to Jim, come over today. And so we had a party. We had like a living funeral for him in his bed. All the nieces that were nurses happened to be here. My daughter just happened to be here from Kansas City, happened to be here. And we were all in bed with him. We had a big party. He got all the Diet Coke he wanted, all the ice cream, whatever he wanted. He just got whatever he wanted. We were all there together. But he had a brother that he hadn't talked to him in about 20 years.
Okay.
The brother came with video. There was that old stuff on the reels.
Sure.
This video that he showed on the wall of when they climbed Mount Whitney when he was like 25 years old. And they had this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful reconciliation. And you know what? I don't even remember what their initial argument was about. It goes back. So those things are important, but they were able to reestablish that relationship. That also happened to be on my son Eric's, would have been his 31st birthday. So yeah, I know. This is wrong. This is true. And so they reconciled, and then he passed away again very peacefully the next day. But there were people. The hospice nurse was there, and like I didn't take any. I didn't feel responsible for it like I did the day before. I kind of feel like God just said, "Okay, Kim, if you're going to feel like you contributed,
anymore.
I'm gonna." No more guilt for you. Let me just give you another day. And then the hospice nurse was there, and it was just his time. I mean, I realized I finally had it in my heart that God was done with him, but he wasn't done with me. He wasn't done with me yet, but he was done with him. And that gave me a peace knowing that I didn't contribute. I wanted my most important job was helping him in these last days. Most important job. And I felt like, okay, I didn't screw it up, and that helps. That helps it's amazing, like where your brain goes with all this stuff,
Yeah, I know.
It just goes crazy places. So yeah, it goes crazy places.
Yeah,
so anyway,
crazy.
So that's my story. That's a crazy one.
I very rarely cry on podcasts, but this one, I'm like, I just know so much stuff is going through my head that I want to ask you, but like, before you lost your son, did you think there was an afterlife? Did you feel like you would seem it just like, how did you?
Well, I don't. Here's the interesting thing. So my mother died from suicide too when I was 17. So yeah, I know. I'm happy. I'm not in Rwanda, right? I mean, hey, so she died when I was 17. And when she died, she was a very, very strong Christian, strong Catholic. And nobody would give her a funeral in those days. And so I remember I was in the mortuary with her casket just dripping in shame. It was just hushed tones. There was nothing, nobody, it was just horrible. That was my remembrance at 17. When my son died, he had gone to an all-boys Catholic school, a military school here in Minnesota, St. Thomas Academy. It was Catholic. We were Baptist. So he was active in our church. He was very active in the school. He was a drum major. And he wasn't there anymore. He was at Columbia University. So he wasn't even at the school anymore, right? That school bussed hundreds of kids over in their dress uniforms to sit through a funeral talking about suicide. And we all talked about suicide there. We openly talked about it. All the pastors were there supporting us and talking to us. A priest that was dying himself, he was on oxygen, said, "Kim, I know where he is, and I'm going to say hi to him pretty soon. So I'm going to give him a hug for you." They were so supportive. Both the Catholics and the Baptists were so supportive. And when Eric's casket was brought down the aisle, those boys in their dress uniforms that I can't even talk about without getting goosebumps, was one of the best gifts ever. Those boys, hundreds of boys, lined the aisle in their dress military uniforms and saluted his casket as he was being brought down. It was the most beautiful. Thousands, I don't even know, all the church was packed and all the extra rooms were packed with video. Thousands of people were there for this little 19-year-old who wasn't even here anymore. He was at Columbia. I was able to kind of understand at that point in time. His death brought back my mother's death, I have to say. So there was complicated grief. I mean, so that made it all difficult. But I just felt so supportive, and I did struggle with where he was and I kind of said to God, I said, well, God, you gave your so that we could live. So like if he's not in a good place, then I'll take his place. You send him up there. He's just a kid. He's a baby. He's 19. So send him. So I made that deal with God, right? Because you do as a mother, right? You're a mother, right?
Gosh, yes. I mean,
yeah, right. But I realized, because I had so much support, including Lyndon Dungy's brother, or Tony Dungy's brother, Lyndon, who's a dentist 2 blocks down the street, who would send us letters because Tony Dungy, I don't know if remember who he is, he's an NFL coach that lost his son to suicide right before the win. So his brother just happened to be right down the street, another dentist down the street. And he was sending us letters and letters and letters about what we could do, how to get us through every week, including one perfectly timed about where he was when I was having a meltdown. I got a letter exactly telling me where he was. So I had all of these people around me supporting me. And that was what's so helpful. And that's kind of what I would like. I kind of feel that, if we get comforted in our losses, then it's our job to comfort everybody else, because we're all in this together, right? All of us in this world are all in this together. Yes. And we just need to help each other. And my message really is, no matter where you are, no matter how far down that pit you are, it is possible with a lot of work and a lot of fight, and emotional help. I'm treated for depression, to get out of that pit. And it's so good for you and for everybody around you if you can manage that.
And interestingly enough, you lost your mom and your son quickly without any preparation. You weren't able to say goodbye.
Right.
And then your husband, you got to be with him. So it's like, I just, you've been through both ways. I always say to myself, what should I rather have? As far as, and I think about it all the time. I'm like, I got to stop this. I call them junk thoughts because I just keep ruminating about it. But I think that a lot of my girlfriends with kids were the same.
Right.
And my biggest fear is leaving them alone, even though they're not alone. They're not.
Right.
So I think what you're doing is amazing. It's just really, really helpful, because I think you're right. No one wants to talk about death. Everyone's like, no, don't talk about it. I'm Jewish. My mom is Catholic. My dad is Jewish. So my dad will say, you'll put a kinehora. You'll put a jinx on it, right? I mean, but I like to talk about it. I feel like if I'm prepared, then maybe it'll be easier.
Right.
Do you feel,
and doesn't the Jewish religion have is it like a 7-day? Yeah, so at least they address it. At least they, so there's an addressing it.
It's so interesting about it's called sitting Shiva, where we bury really quickly and then we mourn afterwards. It just doesn't let you be sad, because you have to entertain all these people at your home or at someone's house. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my grandpa passed away. I was like, I can't, it's a lot of
pressure.
Yes, pressure. Thank you. And also putting on this front you're okay, and you just don't want to be. Oh my gosh. I don't know. I just really, I think I keep saying amazing. I can't think of it. I feel really
give you a hug.
I know, I do want to hug you. I wish I could. But look, Dr. Kim, I want to ask a couple things. First of all, where can everybody find you if they need, you're doing grief counseling?
I'm not doing really private grief counseling, but what I do is I have a widow's book that will help you set up grief counseling for widows after a husband dies. So I have books. I have 2 books on that.
Okay.
I'm not doing it personally right now, but what I'm doing basically is helping people get their affairs together.
Yes.
That's my focus right now, is to help people get all their stuff together so that their children will get that gift of love after they go.
I love that. Okay, so everyone's going to find you. Where do we find you? I'm going to put it in the show notes, the link to your book, the link to everything, so everybody can find you. Do you have a website? Yes.
Yes, Dr. Kimberly. It's Dr. KimberlyHarms.com.
Okay.
It's really easy.
I know. You know what? I'm sitting here. Don't lose it, Jen. Don't lose it. And I did. I'm sorry. I just,
But we're human. And emotion, we need to express our emotions. So thank you. It's a real privilege for me to see that you were touched. We're human, and that's part of it.
Everybody is going to really, this episode is going to be one that I think people will send to family. They'll send to their friends. They'll share with their loved ones, because this is something that has to be done. We have to talk about it, and we have to address it. And you're so right. I'm going to get off this podcast with you. I'm going to call my mom, and I'm going to order her the book, and we're going to do it together, because I don't know.
Do it together. Yeah. Doing it together with mother, daughter. Wow. And I think for younger people, it's important to know that you really should do it too, because death does come unexpectedly. You don't know when it's going to happen. If you've bought life insurance, you have already admitted that the possibility exists. So let's buy emotional life insurance and get this together so that your kids can do it.
That's what this is. It's
an emotional
life insurance.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Dr. Kim, I loved having you.
I love being here.
I loved meeting you. And I think that you're going to be a big hit, and I think that everybody should follow you. Everybody follow Dr. Kim, and you're here if we need you. I love it.
I'm here if you need me, and you can contact me through my website.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been wonderful.
Oh, it's been fun. Okay, everybody, go do something exciting for yourself today. Do something good for yourself, and follow Dr. Kim. And everybody needs to buy her book and her workbook. I'm going to be bossy today and say that. That's all I have to say. Okay, you guys, I love you. Thank you for being here with me today. Peace, love, and so much truth, y'all. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, honey.